But let's talk about seller concessions. And a lot of times when I use the word seller concession with my clients, because that's what it says in the contract, they get so confused because the common term is closing cost, right? And so one thing I do with my clients right off the bat, a lot of times before I even get to the offer process, I start talking about seller concessions over and over again, and I explain to those they're the same thing as closing costs. It's one of the first things I talk about. Seller concessions, if you're writing an offer, for one, you need to talk to the loan officer about seller concessions. You should not be guessworking seller concessions at all. But for me, the way I figure it out quickly in my mind is basically seller concessions handle prepaids, right? And so prepaids are your prepaid taxes and your prepaid insurance. And they're the two main ones most of the time. You can get your tax information from the MLS, CRS tax data, RPR will always have the last year taxes on there.
You can't forget your escrow holdback either.
Usually if you do the full amount of taxes and full amount of insurance, you handle your holdback, or at least it comes close enough.
Comes close.
At least when you're spitballing the numbers, you can be pretty close. But once again, you need to talk to your loan officer about seller concessions. The other thing that goes into those are lender fees and title fees. So pretty much right off the bat, if I'm needing to guesswork on seller concessions to have a conversation with my client, not when I'm writing the offer, because if I'm writing the offer, I'm talking to my loan officer about seller concessions. But I usually figure $1,500 in lender fees. I figure $1,500 in title fees. I figure the full amount of taxes. And then if you want to be really safe, just do insurance, the same amount of taxes. That'll usually be pretty high on you though. Insurance-wise, it takes time to know what it is.
Well, if you want to be sure on those title fees, because they do vary quite a bit, I find all the title companies in town.
They have a calculator.
They have a calculator on their website. You can just go there and you can plug it in real quick. I'd say if you're dealing with something 175, you're probably looking at 175 to 250 to 1600. When you start getting over 15 or 250,000, you want to start pushing it up to 18 to 21. When you start getting your upper levels, yeah, because it's going to be more
because your insurance policy. So a lot of your title fees people don't realize is the homeowner's insurance policy on the title work, and that's really important. And a lot of people don't realize that they're paying for that in those title fees.
The lender fee part of you're probably pretty close. We're a little less than that, but still you don't know for sure what that company's going to be, and you got to consider in the appraisals $500 and all those miscellaneous fees. But you're pretty close to that. The one thing a lot of people forget about on the title fees is the recording fee always seems to be in a different box, and we always add that in a little bit later. Yeah. But take advantage of those websites. The Great American Title has a nice one, and I think Meridian you can do it. Almost all of them you can go.
I think most of them you can. The other thing with seller concessions too, you can do inspections on there. The kicker is though that the title company is not going to write you a check back in most cases for those expenses.
Doesn't it say on your contract inspection?
It does.
It says closing costs, prepaids, and inspection.
It does. The problem is the lender doesn't like to give money back. I don't know why, but I have trouble. So if a buyer pays for their inspection out of pocket, I always have trouble getting it covered under seller concession and getting them a check back. I don't know if there's a rule around that.
Well, not necessarily. If the buyer paid for the inspection, it depends on the company, but if we verify they paid it, then you
can pay it back.
We just have to document it.
So the one thing is, if you're going to plan on getting a paid inspection with seller concessions, you need to talk to the lender.
You need to get the documentation.
You need to talk to the lender and give it to them.
Pay it, we can allow that.
Now, there are inspections out there that will let you pay it at closing.
Right.
But the problem is they usually charge $50 to $100 extra. So if we're tight on money, but don't just let your buyer pay for it out of pocket and tell them they're going to get reimbursed at closing. You need to have a conversation with the lender and the title company that they'll get that money back before they pull the money on it, especially if they don't have the funds to really play with it.
That's a good point.
One other thing that can be paid by seller concessions, and I think most people don't understand what this is, but points. Can you explain points and how we can use those? And especially right now, points is a very big conversation.
Because everyone has points right now. It's because of the way the trend of the market is and the risk that they're involved. They're not giving us a par rate. And the par rate, our par rate is with points, depending on and I'm starting to see more par rates, and they're going up in the interest rate. I think the points, as we settle down with this market, will start going away a little bit, and we'll get the higher interest rates. Because we used to always get just higher interest rates and no points. But they're trying to keep the rates down and look like they're the best, I believe.
So essentially with the points, what the buyer is doing is buying down their interest rate, right?
Are buying their interest rate because we don't
More
have
or
an
less.
option.
Right, you have to. So they're requiring points to get down to this interest rate. And so what is a point? Is it a percentage of the loan, or what's?
It is an actual loan amount. You would deduct their down payment and whatever they're actually financing the point. If it's 1% or 0.5% or 0.375%, that's based on that.
And what defines what the percentage of the point is?
That's an interesting question. The market.
The market. So
I open up my rates, and if it has 3/8, it's $1,500 or whatever it is.
Right. So when you're pulling up your program where you're filing the application, basically you're getting a list of what the point would be to be a certain interest rate, right?
And what's cool when I start my loan process, because we actually consider it as closing costs.
Right.
We lean more toward closing costs, but you and I are having a nice conversation earlier, kind of laying this out, where it's getting to the point where we're having to ask the seller to pay the points, and my buyers are covering their closing costs and their down payment to get the deals to work out in some certain situations.
So what he's saying there is, so when they're structuring the offer, they're doing the purchase price, they're doing seller concessions for the points, and then the buyer's bringing the down payment and your, let's call them typical seller concessions, the prepaid, the lender fees, and the title fees, those closing costs there. And then they're putting in seller concessions for the seller to pay for the points. And it's starting to be pretty good chunks of cash here and there. And we're dealing with it more than what we ever have for the most part right now.
It's affecting, the points affect the loan size. It's all risk-based pricing. Everything, my whole pricing is on risk-based pricing, where we were talking earlier. The pricing's based on their debt to income, the amount of money they're putting down, the loan size, and if someone's wanting to take a risk. I have 20 people in the ball game that I'm looking at pricing.
Does area make a difference in that?
Not so much.
Not so much. Okay.
When I put in the different markets, it's all about the same.
All about the same. I didn't know if more rural properties maybe had more risk to them, or.
And that's when I give you I tell you, hey, we got these points on here, or if this is my closing costs, are $7,900. We have points on it.
So how often is that changing right now?
It's been very consistent right now.
Has it been? Okay.
And
but it could change in like a 24-hour period pretty easily. So you could be working with a client with a pre-approval letter, had all these conversations, go through a week and get a property under contract, and come Monday, Tuesday, the pricing changes.
Absolutely.
So just because you have a pre-approval letter from 3 weeks ago, before you write that offer, you should talk to your loan officer.
It's changing daily.
Yeah.
Every week. We got the feds talking about raising the rates every week.
The market's changing. I mean, the way
the risk, the people are going to protect themselves. Mm-hmm. The investors are going to protect themselves, and we already got a warning to lock. I get an email, lock your loans right now, or I get a text actually, because we watch it that close.
Mm-hmm. And so, points are a big deal right now, getting seller concessions. As this market changes and it becomes more of a level market from just a straight seller's market, we're going to be negotiating a lot of things that we haven't had to do the last couple of years. And some of that's points, some of that's more concessions. We can get creative with a creative loan officer to get people in these houses.
I think it's going to be a plus.
I think our lives will be a lot easier when it's all said and done.
I think it's going to help the buyers some.
Yeah.
Because the way the last 24 months has been, where all we've been doing is jumping through hoops trying to get people
exhausting.
On conventional loans so they could win their bid and do everything we could. But we still work together. Yeah. And we made it happen. Mm-hmm. And that's what it's about.
Your partners are all about that.
Absolutely.
I mean, whether it comes from appraisers to inspectors to loan officer, insurance people, lawyers, it all comes in. I mean, as a real estate agent, you're responsible for everybody, but you're not the expert in any of these fields. You have to know enough to be dangerous, and then have a partner that can answer those questions, get these deals done.